And we are back. Chris Mannix, Sergio Mora together again. And Sergio, before we begin this show, there is something that we heard this week, something that I think our audience needs to hear. Take a listen.
You're fired.
That's right. If you are listening to this show, you are listening on the Boxing with Mannix and Mora feed because our partnership with Ring Magazine has ended. It was a good run. 5 weeks by my count, roughly one Sergio Mora world title reign, if we're going to put it into perspective. In all seriousness, it's fine. It was a very amicable ending between us and the Ring. The Ring has been kind of putting together a small media company on the fly. The initial plan there was to have podcast. They have decided to pivot away from that for now, at least, and it's something they certainly could revisit. We were on what was basically a monthly contract with the Ring. So when they made the change, our deal came to an end. So what does this all mean? It means we are back, baby, back on this feed, back on a more regular schedule. That's another part of it. 2, sometimes 3 podcasts, I would say, a week. We'll have another announcement, as Sergio and I know, about something else that we have cooking, that relates to this show somewhat. Something we are both very excited about. But one thing I can promise, though, Sergio, is that this is the audio feed from here on out. If you're a podcast listener, this is where you will find the show moving forward. Sergio, we were in Orlando this past weekend for the Ammo Williams fight. I ran into so many podcast listeners, really, like 7 or 8 of them on fight night, that were all asking me, where's the show? They didn't realize that it switched feeds from our feed to the Ring feed. But right now, the show, it's here. It's going to be here. So keep this feed locked and, keep rating, reviewing as you have been doing for the last few years now. So I'm excited to get back to it, Sergio. How do you feel about the new beginning here?
So you got fired, Chris Mannix. Is that it? You got fired. Let's keep it real. You got fired. All right. So look, a Boston educated, responsible guy that's accustomed to getting this thing, he got fired. Less than 6 weeks notice, you got fired. Me, I didn't get fired because look, I never had a job in my life. So this is the first time technically I got let go out of anything. I never even been dumped. All right. So I don't know what that's like. All right. So Chris Mannix, I'm happy to be back on here because I respect our boxing fans, and yes, you're right, man. Everywhere I go, I do hear about the podcast, and they quote me. They quote me of the things that I say on the podcast, either on the plane or on the flights, or in the boxing show. Is always cool to talk to podcast listeners because it's kind of separate from like our DAZN gig. It feels like it's separate, but I always love mingling with them, and I think they like our rapport. You're like the nerdy, stiffy pencil neck, and I'm like the cool brown vato from East LA. So it works. It's a good culture clash with boxing.
The cool brown vato from East LA. That's what you consider yourself?
That's right. Just like your wife, but she's a vata.
Okay, we'll leave my wife out of this. You're the busted face, scraggly, shriveled liver, one-time world champion from somewhere in East LA.
All I heard was world champion.
I know that's all.
I can't tack that title to any of your accomplishments.
It's true. That's true. You can't do that. All right. So let's get back into it, man. We got a lot to talk about on this show. Let's start first, Sergio, with the return of Edgar Berlanga, the former super middleweight title challenger. First fight for Edgar Berlanga this past weekend since his loss to Canelo Alvarez last year. He knocks out Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz in the first round. I didn't learn anything in this fight, if we're being honest. This was a gross mismatch on paper. Gonzalez Ortiz was coming off basically 10 years out of the ring. He had 2 low-level fights in 2024, but he had not fought for 10 years before that. He was a middleweight coming up to 168 pounds. He was 35 years old. He was in awful shape. He was telling me during the week that when he was in prison for the 9 years and 10 months he spent behind bars, he ballooned up to over 300 pounds. So this was him cutting back down to try to get in some form of fighting shape. So Berlanga, look, he did what he had to do. He got the first round knockout. He got another win on his resume. Your thoughts on what you saw from Edgar Berlanga?
Well, I'm glad that we kept it real. Before that first bell started, me and you were saying this is not going to last long. You said first round. I said it was going to end in the second. You were right.
Say that again. Say that again. You were right.
You're
Say that
right.
again.
Yeah, it was the first round. I thought it was going to last at least 2 rounds. I said it was going to be a second round knockout. Okay, so you were right. But once I seen him on the scale, I realized why you were right. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt because the he could punch, he could fight. I mean, even though you're inactive, if you have some kind of power, you can last 6 minutes in a fight. But yeah, this was, like you said, a gross mismatch, but we called it. And it was somewhat of an embarrassing mismatch. But then let's look at the positives. He had a good record, unbeaten. Uh, it was a stay busy fight for Berlanga. That's okay. It's a good look on his resume. 10
It's not
years.
a good look on his resume.
Hold
It's
on,
not
10 years.
just because he's
Let me
unbeaten, Sergio.
finish.
It's not a
Let
good look on
me
his resume.
finish. 10 years from now, no one's going to remember who the
Yes, they
hell
will.
Jonathan Gonzalez is. He's just going to remember that he had an unbeaten record.
No,
He
they're
had that
not. You think they're
zero.
going to look at that like, wow, we beat a 20-0-1 guy? Then you're not going to just
Absolutely.
do one click on BoxRec and find out this guy didn't fight for 10 years? I mean, come on.
Well, I didn't say research his record. All I
You
said
see
is
the
look at his
cursory
record.
look.
It
Okay.
has an undefeated, unblemished, unscathed record. That's all they're going to look at. So yeah, you look at Berlanga's record, like, whoa, he beat undefeated fighters. He whatever. Anyway, but he got back to his knockout ways. That's what we are accustomed to seeing with Berlanga in his record: first round knockouts. I mean, when he started out, 16 straight first round knockouts. I mean, Mike Tyson and some of the biggest punchers in the world, George Foreman, couldn't do that. Berlanga did it. So we have to give him his credit. And he got another one on the list. Yes, it was a bad one, but we called it. We said it. We did our professional job. We warned the fans that it wasn't going to last long, and it didn't. Now let's hope that Berlanga does the right thing and gets one of these names that he's supposedly calling out. I would love to see a Caleb Plant fight. I would love to see Munguia. I would love to see anyone that's of relevance in the super middleweight division. We don't want to see no more Jonathan Gonzalez or anyone below that. No Cosaris, no up in title. Nobody that's been knocked out like that. Plant is the only one that I think makes sense that's been knocked out. Maybe Munguia.
Look, he was contractually obligated to a comeback fight. He had hoped to have that comeback fight as a headlining event in Puerto Rico. He couldn't agree on terms with Matchroom, so this was the contract. $500,000 for basically the comeback fight of your choosing. My biggest problem with this fight,
Whoa, whoa,
Sergio,
whoa, 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 whoa. How much they pay him?
about $500,000, right around there.
Oh my God. You are kidding me, man.
That's
They
what the
paid him
contract says.
$500,000 to fight this Vato straight out of prison. You're kidding me,
Yes,
Chris Mannix. Please tell me you're lying.
I am not lying. That is right around what the number was. Yes.
Oh my God. Once again, I gotta praise Berlanga's manager, Keith Conley. Oh
Well,
my
look,
goodness. $500,000 for a guy that I would fight tomorrow. I would fight Gonzalez tomorrow. All right. I'm letting you know right now.
yes, you said that all during the week too. You said that if somehow Gonzalez upset Berlanga, you were ready to get back in the
Oh my
ring.
God, Berlanga, you know what? Berlanga's laughing all the way to the bank. He made $10 million with Canelo in a fight that he really didn't deserve. He came back and made $500,000 against a guy that no one's even heard of. I mean,
He's got a good.
Berlanga is
He
laughing
had
all the way to the bank. And if he has any kind of issues with being an undercard, I don't care how many undercards I fight on or anyone fights on. If you're getting paid $500,000 to be under a contender, that's crazy, man. That is nuts.
my biggest problem with that fight was not that it was on an undercard, and it was not that it was a fight that Berlanga was going to be heavily favored in. It's just that it was a fight that his opponent had no chance to win. I mean, you think about the comeback fights of some recent Canelo opponents. Caleb Plant, he comes back against Anthony Durrell, a former world champion at 168 pounds. A lot of bad blood between those two guys coming into the fight. Plant was favored, but you could see a pathway where Durrell could come up with a win. Jaime Munguia, he comes back against Eric Bazinian. Eric Bazinian, at that time, undefeated, top 5 ranked. You could certainly see a pathway for Eric Bazinian to win that fight. These were credible comeback fights. Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz was not a credible comeback fight. And I don't know that Berlanga gains anything from that experience outside of putting a few more extra bucks into his pocket.
I'll
Now,
tell you what it gains. Hold up. I'll tell you what it gains. and what his fans learn about him, that he could swallow his pride. I didn't think Berlanga could do that. He has way too much of that overconfidence and swagger, and he thinks more than he is. But from going from $10 million payday to a $500,000 payday, it takes a lot of pride to swallow there. And then going from being on the top bill, pay-per-view card in a Las Vegas superstar card, to being in an Orlando card on a French Contenders undercard, that shows a little bit of character. All right. So you got to give some kind of credit to Berlanga to willing to swallow that mega pride of his to do that. So there is some good things that came out of this.
Well, look, it was that or don't fight. And if you don't fight,
a lot of fighters won't fight.
Well, if you don't fight, then all of a sudden you're in a contractual dispute with Matchroom and you're not fighting for 3 more months or 6 months. I think the mindset of Berlanga coming into that fight was, no, this wasn't ideal. He wanted a bigger event. He wanted a bigger stage. He wanted more money. He wanted a better opponent. But if he balked at this opportunity, it might be June, July, August before he finally got back in the ring. And he wanted to take this fight, get out of the contract, and move forward with his career. Now he can. Now he is a promotional free agent with the ability to basically go anywhere he wants and take a fight. And look, there are 2 obvious front runners for Edgar Berlanga. One is the guy you mentioned, Caleb Plant, who at this point does not have an opponent for the first half of this year. We know about the bad blood between these 2 guys. They've been sniping at each other in person. They've been sniping at each other on social media. That would be a tremendous promotion. I think a pretty good fight because, Caleb Plant is more boxer than puncher, but he's become, I think, more of a physical fighter in his more recent fights. I think you'd probably agree with that. The other guy that I think is high on the list, I know is high on the list, is Jaime Munguia. Jaime Munguia, it was just announced today officially going to face Bruno Saras. That fight's happening May 3rd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. If Munguia can avenge that knockout loss to Saras, and he's still going to be a favorite to do it, that is a very makeable fight between Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia. Look, we know where they want it too. At least I do. Netflix, the worst kept secret in boxing is that Netflix is going to broadcast the Canelo Alvarez Terrence Crawford fight. That's going to happen. Also a terrible secret is that TKO is the most likely promoter of record for that fight. The Dana White, Nick Khan, Turki Al-Sheikh, promotional company will handle that. Canelo Crawford is the headliner. Jaime Munguia works with Eddie Reynoso. Jaime Munguia has a real good chance of landing in the co-main event of that fight as well. And if you're Edgar Berlanga, if Canelo really is going to fight at like Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas in an event on Netflix, you want to be on that co-main event. You want to be the guy facing Jaime Munguia in September in that event. So I would expect Edgar Berlanga, Keith Conley, everybody involved with Team Berlanga to push really hard come May 5th when Munguia gets back to the U.S. to make that fight happen, because I think that guy's number 1 on their hit list.
And it'll be on September Mexican Independence holiday. So yeah, you would want to face a Mexican, even though it is Jaime Munguia, a junior middleweight coming up all the way to super middleweight. He's already been knocked out. Yeah, there's chinks in his armor now. I would much rather see the Caleb Plant fight, but we know Keith Conley, the manager of Berlanga, and Berlanga, they're not going to want to face a tricky fighter, Plant, who's coming off a great win, a tough win with McCumbee. And like you said, he's more of a boxer than a puncher. We want a flat-footed guy that catches punches with his face and comes with that Mexican style. That's Jaime Munguia. So yeah, man, I first of all, I would like to see that fight. Second of all, I'm on board. And third of all, Allegiant Stadium. Berlanga will get a taste of the big leagues. I mean, he fought under 2,000 people this past weekend in Orlando. I mean, yeah, for him to get out of that and going back to the huge stage like he did with Canelo in Vegas, I would love that. I would like to see that.
Well, that's a chance. That Munguia fight, too, is a chance for Berlanga to get back on that top level at 168. If he's able to beat Munguia, and I think if that fight ends, however that fight ends, it's going to be in a knockout. One of those two guys would get knocked out.
Not only that, man, but Berlanga hasn't faced the champion. That Munguia will be the first former champion that he's faced. I'm pretty sure that's the case. He hasn't faced nobody.
He fought Canelo. What are you talking about?
Oh, well, other than Canelo. You know,
That's other than Canelo, other than the best guy at 168 for all the belts.
yeah,
So
but
three of the
I
best.
said former champion. He's a current champion. I
All
like,
right.
you
Well,
want
he's
to
also
pick
a
up
former champion in other weight
you want
classes
to pick
too.
off these former champions. Those are the guys that you want on your resume. I mean, that really is the case. If you can get first round knockouts against former champions, that's how you pick up your stock. That's how you actually get the big mega fights again. If he wants to even get a glimpse or a wink from Canelo in a rematch, which I don't think ever happens, but he talks about it. If he wants to see that, then he has to knock former champions out. I think Munguia and Plant, and that's the way to go going forward instead of just calling out the megastar in Canelo.
I think Munguia gets him back on that level, and I think it opens up some possibilities. For starters, if he can beat Munguia, I think his next fight would probably be back in Puerto Rico. He can start doing some events in Puerto Rico in front of some bigger crowds and really leverage a win like that. But he has to get the win. I mean, he has to get a big win on his resume. Right now, his best win remains what is it? The Irish
What
kid.
is it? Coceres.
No,
It has to be
it's
Coceres.
Padraig McCrory. He's the best win in his career.
No, I would say Coceres. Coceres
Uh,
actually almost beat a champion in BJ Saunders. I would say
almost hand grenades and horseshoes. Almost doesn't matter. Patrick McCrory was undefeated. He was
he
top
was
10.
ahead in the championship rounds and got stopped.
And then he
I
got
would say
stopped.
Coceres.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna
Whatever.
agree to
Doesn't
this.
matter. Doesn't matter. We're not talking about a big difference there. He's got to get a big win, and I think Munguia presents that opportunity. I think that's the fight that he's going to be going for in his next time out. All right, let's talk about the main event this past Saturday. That was Ammo Williams, 160-pound contender. He knocks off Patrice Volney. Competitive fight. I thought way more competitive than two of the judges had it, but the right guy won. Ammo Williams did enough to win that fight. 2 in a row now for Ammo Williams since that loss to Hamza Shiraz. And I'll ask you, Sergio, what I asked Ammo Williams in the ring. Does he now have his momentum back?
Yes, he does. And confidence back because when you get knocked out and you're still young and you're still cracking the top 10, you're not supposed to be getting beat up, let alone get knocked out. But that's the mindset of Ammo. He wants to face the biggest champions, the biggest names, and you could see that by the guys that he's fighting. He's facing undefeated fighters, Mannix. I mean, with a guy with his record, his last 8 opponents have 4 were undefeated. And then you have a guy in Volney who was once beaten but could easily have been undefeated, and he had the same style, the same height and range, and he had power of a Hamza Shiraz who just finished knocking him out in brutal fashion 2 fights ago. So I credit the maturity, the mindset of Ammo Williams coming back after the knockout and fighting Volney, and I really credit his corner and his intelligence and his game plan, because against Volney there was little parts where this fight could have got out of control, especially in that 6th round when he got rocked. They both got rocked, but we're accustomed to seeing Ammo's opponents get rocked. We're not accustomed to seeing him get rocked. And I just thought he fought with brains and not brawn. And that's what I wanted to see from Ammo Williams, especially after coming off a physical fight. I like it, man. I like where he's at. I like where Kevin Cunningham is at, his trainer, who did an incredible job in the corner, really keeping him focused. Because, like I said, this fight was going in the wrong direction in that 6th round. That second half of the fight could have got physical. And a physical fight would have been a Volney fight. Ammo didn't allow that. So he showed a lot of things. He showed experience, he showed intelligence, and he showed me more than brawn. He showed me brains.
Yeah. Right after the loss to Shiraz, when Ammo was in that locker room, he said to Eddie Hearn, Eddie, get me back right away. Look, Shiraz beat him clean, but it was a short training camp for Ammo Williams. He was going through some stuff in his personal life at that time. I think he knew he was better than that. And Eddie Hearn did that. He got him on the Boots Ennis undercard in November of last year. And now he got him back headlining against a very credible opponent. And Ammo picked up arguably the best win of his professional career. And there are a couple things I really liked about Ammo. One, I thought he fought a more intelligent fight than I've seen him fight in the past. Like, we've known Ammo is a really athletic guy, one of the most athletic middleweights, athletic anyweights, really. He's a super athlete when he's in the ring. But I saw some polish, some strategy, good movement in that fight. I also saw great conditioning. I mean, this was a full 10-week training camp that Ammo had to prepare for Patrice Volney, and you could see that. He was strong in the second half of the fight. It looked like in the championship rounds, that he wanted it more than Patrice Volney did. I think Volney, if he goes back and looks at the tape, maybe it wouldn't have made a decision on 2 of those judges' scorecards, but I thought Volney should have done more in the final third of the fight to try to pull out a win. But I think Ammo really showed something in this fight. She showed that he's on a top level. And now the playing field is kind of open for him, Sergio, because the 160-pound division, which was once one of the glamour divisions in all of boxing, is kind of this barren wasteland. You've got Janibek, who is at the top of the division, unified champion at 160. Erislandy Lara is probably the biggest name in the division. He's got a belt at 160. Carlos Adames has a belt, but none of these guys are superstars. None of these guys are guys that Ammo would have no chance to either A, make a fight against, or B, win a fight. So I think Ammo's now in a pretty great spot to, be in position for a world title shot in his next 2 or 3 fights.
And it goes back to the Berlanga conversation. It goes back to boxing, period. Whenever you're dealing with a young up-and-comer, high prospect, you want to match them up with familiar names, guys that the fans resonate with. They recognize the name. It's name recognition, and normally it's a former champion. So that's what I think is the next step for Ammo Williams and Berlanga. By the way, they need to face somebody that's already won a championship, that has that former world championship title. So Lara makes the most sense, because the other two guys, Aleem Kanuli, I know you avoided saying his last name, Janibek Aleem Kanuli. No,
not how you say his last name, but
I'm closer than you. At least I attempted it.
I think you called him a cannoli.
You're making me hungry now. But no. And then Carlos Adames does have somewhat of a name, but he's too much of a threat. So those
Carlos Adames is not too much of a threat. Good fighter, not some kind of.
He just handily beat the guy that just knocked out Ammo. How do you figure he's not a threat? Slap yourself, man. Of course,
handily beat anybody. But
now Lara, on the other hand, he's in his early 40s. He's a name. He's a guy that's very hard to look difficult against. But Lara's still a Cuban sniper. So this is a guy that could still somewhat make you look bad. And Ammo, I don't think that would be a right choice for Ammo. So down the list, you just have to pick off a name. Pick out someone that fans can really recognize. As soon as they say the name, oh, I know he is. And that's what
I got it for you, Sergio. Look, Ammo's team knows that they're not going to get a world title shot next. They would love a shot at Erislandy Lara. I think people in his team are wondering every day what the WBA is going to do with Lara, if they're going to order him to fight somebody, if Lara even wants to fight at this point. But they know their next fight's not going to be against Lara. So they want a name too. And the name that is on the tip of their tongue right now is Shane Mosley Jr. And Shane Mosley Jr., we know, is at a good run of his own. He's coming off that win last summer against Daniel Jacobs. We haven't seen him back since then, but he's had a good run of quality wins over the last couple of years and put himself in a top position at 160. Shane Mosley Jr. says he wants to be a middleweight champion. Ammo Williams says he wants to be a middleweight champion. That is a tremendous fight, either in Texas, where Ammo Williams is from, or in Southern California, where Shane Mosley has fought for a bunch of times. I think that's a perfect fight. You've got a matchroom fighter. I don't know if Shane's still with Golden Boy. He's fought in the Golden Boy banner.
Still. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Very easy fight to make between these two promoters. That's a no-brainer.
I absolutely love that fight. I love that fight because Mosley is on a high trajectory after that little hiccup that he had. And you're right, he's a hell of a fighter, and stylistically, it'll be an explosive fight. And like I said, there's that name recognition. It's not his name recognition. It's not he's not the former champion, but his father's a legend. His father's a Hall of Famer. His father got a draw with me, by the way. But I'm old enough to have fought his father. All right. So Mosley Jr., I love that fight against Ammo Williams, against two young, strong, powerful guys that sometimes can lose their concentration and go into a fist fight, a firefight. Both these guys have that same temperament. I love that fight.
Why do you keep bringing up your fight against Shane Mosley Sr.?
Well, because he's a Hall of Fame legend. And that his father, Shane Mosley, the Hall of Famer.
Yes.
He went from he fought the three-headed monsters in boxing. I mean, he fought every great name, but he fought in a row. He fought Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, and Sergio Mora. What a killer. What a killer. I mean, there you go. The trifecta right there. Incredible. What a legend.
What a murderer's row.
Murderer's row of boxing.
First two, absolutely. Third one, open for interpretation.
Pacquiao, Mayweather, Mora. There you go.
All right. One more from this card, Sergio. Amari Jones, the Olympic bronze medalist, he makes his debut with Matchroom. Second round knockout of Alessia Mastronunzio, who returns to Italy with his 6th pro defeat. I like Amari Jones. Good size, good tools, great fan base around him. What did you think of Jones's debut?
You would say Mastranuncio, but you wouldn't say Alin Canuli. Okay. Amari Jones, man, I loved everything I seen, and because look, this is easily a fight that could have not that he could have lost, but this is easily a fight where he could have looked bad because you know me and what I say, that hometown curse, and let alone in his pro debut, Amari Jones. Yeah, he was an Olympian. He won a bronze medal. We know he's the goods, but the pro game's different, especially that first fight. It could be nerve-wracking. And then put it in your hometown with your hometown fans and have to worry about, ticket selling and promotion and all that. He passed the test. He passed the test. He didn't get out of character. He fought tall. He kept his range. He went for the knockout. He got it. I really like a little bit of everything. I saw flashes of Devin Haney and flashes of just a really solid pro with his head on right. Guys that's how you want to see a tall fighter with that length and that kind of, what appears to be power manage his advantages, not going for the kill, not giving up his height, not breaking his range and making himself smaller and easier to hit. I like what I saw, Chris Mannix. I think there's a lot to work with. And like I said, he has a high ceiling and it was an A plus of a pro debut, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like what I saw too. He's a big kid, 22 years old, 5'11". I think he has a 76-inch reach. That fight was above the welterweight limit, but I think at Matchroom, the plan for now is to try to get him down to 147. I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to stay there because he is, 22 years old, growing. He's going to fill out and eventually get to 154. But I think moving forward for at least this year, we're going to see him try to cut down to 147, where that size and that reach could have a real impact against some guys. There is going to be an adjustment period, of course. I do think he's a lot more boxer than puncher. I'm basing that more on what I saw from him during the Olympics than
Not
what I
necessarily.
saw from him last Saturday. I mean, I think Sergio, he went for it in this one against Master Nunzio. Nunzio. He had a guy in front of him that had limited skills, no chin. We saw how many tickets he sold in Orlando. I'm talking about Jones, that is, more than 500 sold in Orlando. Good boxing town, Orlando. Antonio Tarver's from Orlando, great Puerto Rican community as well. So I think he went for it in this fight. But I think as he moves forward and as he starts to face a little bit better competition, I think you're going to see a guy that moves a lot, use the entirety of the ring, uses that length to keep guys on the end of his jab. So I think that's probably going to be what he turns out to being. But look, there's a lot of potential there. And look, for Matchroom, you got to be excited about, the potential of having more fights in that Orlando area. If you've got a stable that includes Amari Jones from Orlando, came out in the Orlando Magic gear, Yankiel Rivera, Puerto Rican Olympian, you could put those two guys on a card. You could put a bunch of Puerto Rican fighters on a card in Orlando and sell 3,000, 4,000 tickets in that small venue and make a profit off it. So that's a nice little feather in the cap for Matchroom to have a guy that can sell 500 plus tickets to a fight like that. So I just like everything about him. He's coming back on this Boots Ennis undercard on April 12th. That's a great card for him to be on in Atlantic City. He's probably going to fight 3-4 more times this year, 3-4 times in 2025, and then we'll see. Or 2026, should say, and then we'll see. We'll see what we got in him, Sergio. But I do like his potential.
One last thing on this. One last thing on that. I think you're wrong about the power. I mean, we're going to see him develop, but with that kind of range, those wide shoulders, there's no way he can't punch. I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, of course, I compared him to Devin Haney, and Haney had the similar advantages. The wide shoulders, the length, the speed, but he doesn't have the power, and he still doesn't have the power. I think you're going to be wrong with Omari. I think he's going to develop into a puncher.
It's not that I don't think he can. I don't think he can't punch. It's that the guy we saw basically try to get Master Nunzio out of there. I don't think that's his style. I think he's more boxer than that, and I think he'll get knockouts. But I think he's going to do more. He's going to fight in a way that sets these guys up a little bit more. That's sort of my point. I do think he can develop power. I do believe that, but there is an amateur style in him that needs to be broken. That needs to be pushed out, and he and his team will get him there over the next couple of years. Also this past weekend, Sergio, over in the UK, Nick Ball successfully defended his 126-pound title, knocking out old friend TJ Doheny in the 10th round. Second title defense for Nick Ball, who once again called for a showdown with undisputed 122-pound champion Noe Inoue. Inoue has fights set up for May and September of this year, but he plans to fight again in December in Saudi Arabia, and Nick Ball wants to be that opponent. So, Sergio, is Nick Ball a good opponent for Noe Inoue?
Hell no. Are you kidding me? No. Inoue is top pound for pound, maybe arguably number one. Aside from Usyk, it's between them two. But the monster is a beast. You don't want to. No, man. Look, I understood why he fought TJ Donnie. Donnie, I became a huge fan of his when we called this fight against Daniel Roman. I mean, the effort he put in that fight and the effort he continues to put in every single fight that he puts up. The man could fight. He's a southpaw. His nickname's Power because he has power in both hands, but I mean, he's just a warrior. So first of all, let me credit TJ Donahue again. I mean, what balls on that kid. But look at what Inoue did. Inoue had to be a little bit careful with him. He was minding, he was biding his time. He wasn't as explosive in and out like he normally is. He had to be careful with the power, with the savviness and the craftiness of this veteran, and the timing. Donnie has good timing.
Wait. So I don't care about Donnie anymore. Like, what's your argument though? Like, what is Nick Ball?
That he's not ready. That Nick Ball is not ready. Nick Ball is beating the guys who he's supposed to be beat down. Yes, he has an exciting style. He's going to be a popular fighter. I mean, the demand is there. I'm a fan of Nick Ball. I love watching him fight, but he's not ready for Inoue. That will be a short, explosive night where Ball, who's a forward fighter, he's built like a brick. He's muscular, he's linebacker-ish, and he has quick feet. So it'll be exciting as the last, but he is not ready for Inoue. And I wouldn't want these two to fight yet. Inoue has greater names to be facing, and Nick Ball has just a greater names to be facing as well, but it's two different stages. No, you're dealing with a mega star and a pound for pound talent versus a strong puncher that's just building his reputation. No, it's just not ready yet.
Well, let's not act like Nick Ball hasn't beat some quality guys. He arguably beat Ray Vargas a few years ago at 126. He did beat Raymond Ford, who we both have very high opinions of. A competitive. Well, look, if you fight good guys, they're going to be competitive decisions. He won that fight. Look, what Queensberry is doing with Nick Ball is very smart. These title defenses, they're getting him non-threatening semi-names. Ronnie Rios, non-threatening semi-name, guy that fought at 122. TJ Doheny, look, 6 years ago, I agree with you, fought Daniel Roman, good fighter, but he's a smaller guy, at least in terms of fighting at different weight classes. Former champion, same kind of name. In my opinion, neither of these guys entered that fight with a prayer of beating Nick Ball. I just didn't see it. So they're getting him decent opponents with names who can make him look good. And look, I don't think that Nick Ball is ready for Inoue right now, mostly because I think Nick Ball's got to do more to build himself up, not his skill set, but build up his name. Look, 126 is not a loaded division when it comes to names. There's talent there. I mean, Stephen Fulton is at 126. Rafael Espinoza is at 126. Angelo Leo is at 126. What I want to see from Nick Ball is in his next fight, not to face some kind of faded former name, not some, ex-British champion or whatever. I want to see him face another title holder. I want to see him go into the final quarter of 2025 as a unified champion. Like, the fight I'd love to see is him against Rafael Espinoza. Rafael Espinoza is a 6'1" featherweight. Nick Ball is a 5'2" featherweight. This is like David versus Goliath. This is like a story out of Gulliver's Travels. Like, I want to see these two guys going at it in a 126-pound unification fight. I think there'd be a ton of intrigue around it. It would do good numbers, do a good crowd over in the UK. Espinoza, not an expensive proposition for Frank Warren to bring him over and do that fight. Because if Nick Ball can do to Rafael Espinoza what he's done to Ronnie Rios, what he did to Doheny, then yeah, he is going to be in prime position to be the guy that Inoue fights if Inoue decides to move up to 126.
I agree with all those names, and Espinoza will be a headache, but I'm picturing that matchup and Nick Ball and Espinoza. It'll be like a wrecking ball against the crane that carries the wrecking ball. I would love to see it because normally what you need to face extremely tall fighters is good head movement, great foot speed, and body punching. That's Nick Ball. I mean, if you really want to talk about it, that's a hell of a matchup. That's a hell of a step up. But I don't stylistically, I think it'll be bad matchmaking. One, because we know how these UK fighters, match up against these tough Mexicans. It normally doesn't, go well for them. But I think it's time. I think it's time for Nick Ball to face the next step up. And you're right, he has been facing former champions and quality names. His last 5 fights have been incredible as far as the way they've been matching him and the way he's been passing the test. So Nick Ball is a potential star. They want to be careful with him, not to get him beat or even worse, knocked out at this stage of their career. So I think Frank Warren is smart enough to know that. So they're going to promote him in the way where they're going to keep doing what they're doing, putting him up with names, in evenly matched fights where he's not going to be, the
No, the
quarter
time for
fighter
the time
by
for names
someone.
though is over. The time for names is done. Like he got 2 names on his belt. He got 2 relatively easy title defenses. Now it's time to do a big fight. And if you want to make a fight against Stephen Fulton, I'm all for it. I
Yeah, there
think
you go, Fulton. I'm down for Fulton, but not Espinoza. Fulton's been knocked out. Fulton came up short against
by
Inoue.
Inoue, yeah.
Yeah, but still, he's been stopped. He has a name, former champion. Inoue makes sense. Not
It's just much to me is much more intrigue with Espinoza just to see those 2 guys facing off
Of course, you think it's much more intriguing because you're a sadist. You like to see like that pain and punishment between a
Look,
good.
Nick Ball was great against Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas, another huge 126 pounder. Let's not act like he can't beat these guys. Like he was big against him.
You're playing with too much fire right here. All right, because you got to watch out for these tall.
Nobody knew who Espinoza before
Sebastian
Espinoza.
Fundora type towering infernos, man. You got to watch out for those guys.
Before Espinoza beat Robeisy Ramirez twice, nobody really knew who he was. Nobody thought he was going to become a star at 126. I mean, look at Fedora. Like you bring up Fedora, yeah, great size, but also been knocked out as well. So you can get to these big guys if they choose to fight you on the inside. And Nick Ball makes you fight on the inside. Like that's what he does. He forces the action. I want to see that fight. I want to see Frank Warren Queensberry get together and make that fight happen. All right, I want to ask you about Oleksandr Usyk, the unified heavyweight champion. Back in the gym, saw some video circulating of him this past week and be looking to get back in the ring as soon as this summer. Sergio Daniel Dubois has a version of the heavyweight crown. He's been calling for a rematch with Usyk. The WBO has ordered Usyk-Parker to face Usyk. We know Usyk is winding down his career at this point, maybe only 2 fights left. What is the best fight out there for Usyk at this point?
Why would you say Parker's winding down his career?
No, I said Usyk is winding down.
Oh, Usyk, I'm sorry. Usyk is a giant slayer. He's accustomed to fighting these huge monsters, the Furies and the Dubois of the world. And if you look down his resume, he just fights monster after monster. So he made a career beating bigger guys. But so did Usyk-Parker. He's also a monster slayer, but he does it differently. Well, not really. I mean, he does it with footwork and agility and upper body movement, but they're 2 completely different styles. They're accustomed to fighting these giants. But if they fight each other, I like that matchup. And add the fact that Usyk-Parker has momentum. So 2 giant slayers with momentum at this point of their career. They're both hungry. Usyk-Parker has been doing everything right. It's like a new lease in his career has happened since he hooked up with Andy Lee. So I love this fight. I don't like it. I love this fight because we got done with these gigantic heavyweights. It's great when they're knocking guys out, but then when they're fighting these smaller, agile fighters, they look like they look clumsy. They look like they don't know how to fight these smaller heavyweights. And by smaller, I mean 6'4". That used to be giants back in 20 years ago. So yes, I like this fight because Parker can match not say compete with, but he could somewhat match the upper body movement of Usyk, the trickiness of Usyk, the footwork, the speed, and he's still a big man. So yeah, man, I love that fight.
Yeah, I really wish that we got the Parker versus Dubois fight because then there wouldn't be any question about who Usyk should face next. It would have been the winner of that fight, but Dubois got sick a few weeks ago, and Dubois, or I should say Parker, did what he had to do. He knocked out Martin Bakole in the second round. Big win for him, regardless of the conditioning of Martin Bakole. And look, I lean towards Parker as well because Parker is one of the few names at heavyweight that Usyk has not faced. I mean, think about it. Derek Chisora faced him. Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, Tyson Fury. He's faced them. He's beaten them all. Some of them he's beaten twice. Parker is a former champion who has earned a shot at a title. He has beaten Zhilei Zhang. He has beaten Deontay Wilder. Like I said, he most recently KO'd Martin Bakole. I mean, I think he's the guy that earned this opportunity. Not to say that Dubois hasn't, because Dubois has been a heck of a run himself, but because we've already seen Usyk against Dubois, and it's not to say we'd see the exact same fight. Dubois has clearly improved since that knockout loss to Usyk a couple of years ago. But we have not seen Parker against Dubois. We have not seen the Parker that is trained by Andy Lee in against Dubois. That's made a huge difference in Joe Parker's career. So if I had to, if I had any say in any of this, and if I was in the ear of Turki Al-Sheikh and the people involved with making that fight for Usyk, I would love to see it be Parker. I think he's the guy that's earned the opportunity.
And there it is. He earned the opportunity. So he's been around a long time. He's fought all these names. He's only been stopped, one time? Twice? Once, I think.
Stopped by Zhang and stopped by Joe Joyce.
Just once. And it was late in that fight. And in a fight that he was actually, man, I love that fight. I love watching that fight. He's a giant slayer, man. He goes for the big shots. He knows how to fight these big men. So yes, I want Joseph Parker. He deserves it. He's earned it. Most importantly, he's a hard worker, and it's a type of fight where he can find success somehow, some way. He's that smart. He's that experienced, and he's that damn good, man. So I hope, even though I think Parker still has many fights left, mega fights he probably doesn't have left, especially if he comes up short again. But I hope he gets that big payday and a chance at undisputed and a killer like Usyk. Because I think he can give him issues. I think he can do well. Parker's
and
sneaky, damn good fighter.
If Usyk goes in a different direction for some reason, I'm not really sure what direction he would go, but if he went in a different direction, I would love to see Dubois against Parker rescheduled. Like that fight got even bigger in the aftermath of Parker's performance against Bakole. So that would be a huge fight.
And one last thing, Mannix, and if it does happen, it'll probably be a Riyadh season type fight. It would be on an undercard of say AJ and Fury if they ever match up to fight. That would be a huge heavyweight card, and they could just match down the heavyweights again, like Turki Al-Sheikh likes to do. Yeah, man, that'll be a great semi-main event, and I hope.
If AJ fights Fury, and I have no idea if that fight's ever going to materialize. As far as I know, Tyson Fury's still retired. But if AJ fights Fury, that's happened in the UK. I would put that at almost
better happen in the UK. Yes,
90% certainty. And look, if there's enough money for Dubois and Parker on the undercard, I'd still love to see that. That would make the event even bigger. Dubois, obviously a Brit. Parker, well known in the UK, has fought there many times. Training partner of Tyson Fury as well. They could train together for that fight. Would love to see it. No doubt about that. Couple more things before I let you go, Sergio. Last week, we got the return of Keith one-time Thurman. That's right. Keith Thurman is finally back in the ring, the former unified welterweight champion, 36 years old, chronically inactive, just 2 fights since 2019. I think you've had just as many fights as that since 2019. He goes to Australia and knocks out Brock Jarvis in his debut at 154 pounds. What'd you think of Keith Thurman's performance?
First of all, Chris Mannix, I want you to say his name right. It's not Keith Thurman. It's Keith. Keif, all right? Because that's how he says it himself. He speaks with a little, what do you call that? Wait.
Twang?
No, man. Anyway, Keith Thurman, all right? Get his name
lisp.
Right. Lisp. There you go. He speaks with a little lisp in his mouth. So it's Keith Thurman. Everyone knows that, all right? So put some respect and some lisp on his name. But one time's back, man. And this is the thing about former champions, Chris Mannix, that I keep telling you. They only need one good performance or one time, and they're back to a big fight. I don't care how inactive Keith Thurman has been, because that one loss was to a great, amazing, incredible fighter in Manny Pacquiao. And that was by split decision. No shame there. So yes, as inactive as he's been, he's still a name. He still brings that big power. He had that big win in Australia. Now he's back. He only needs one big fight to come back. That's what happens when you're a former champion that's well known. You only need one fight, and boxing fans have short-term memories. So that's it. He's back. Keith Thurman is back. He's going to get a mega fight. He's going to get a big fight, a big payday, and maybe he'll disappear for another 3-4 years. And who cares? That's fine. At least we saw him back. I'm a fan of Thurman. He deserves another big fight. He will get a big fight, and it better be sooner than later, because inactivity has killed the last 4 years of his life.
I don't want to overstate a win over Brock Jarvis, because a couple of years ago Brock Jarvis was starched in the first round of a 140-pound fight against Liam Paro. So Brock Jarvis is the very definition of chinny. But I'll give Keith Thurman credit. After such a long layoff, I think his last fight was in 2022, Mario Barrios. He comes in and he gets the job done. He looks sharp. He looks strong at 154. He looks like he has something left in the tank. And I'll tell you one other thing, Sergio. I am now far more interested in Keith Thurman against Tim Tszyu than I was a year ago before this, when Thurman was still coming off a long layoff and Tszyu looked like a world beater at 154. Since then, Tszyu has taken 2 losses. He went the distance in that loss to Pandora, and he got starched by Bakram Murtalayev. He has clearly taken a step back. Keith Thurman with this win takes a step forward. Now he's an active fighter once again. Now he's a real 154. Now we know that maybe there's a little bit of a chin issue with Tim Tszyu. Doesn't have great head movement. I'm sure Keith Thurman's disappointed that he didn't get the fight against Tszyu last year, but now that fight's got a lot more intrigue to it. Now there's a lot more people believing going in that Keith Thurman could win. So I don't know where that fight would take place. Maybe it's in Australia. Thurman can go back-to-back down under the same way Devin
maybe
Haney did.
It's going to happen in Australia. It's not maybe. Well, it wasn't a coincidence for Thurman to fly 15 plus hours all the way down under just to face Brock. No, I think that was strategically placed there to see if for the fans, for the Australian fans, and they're great boxing fans down under, if he wins this fight, which the thing about Thurman and that fight with Brock wasn't a good fighter. He looked like a bodybuilder, but he had no boxing ability. He was too stiff.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have any boxing ability.
Yeah, so
he got worked. Like he was there. He was the perfect foil. And you had Tim Tszyu calling the fight ringside for the local television. So it's all being set up for that. I'm not 100% sure it would happen in Australia because Tim Tszyu has really wanted to fight more in the U.S. He's taken a step back because of those 2 losses. So there's a chance Thurman's got a name in the U.S. We might see it in Vegas. But either way, that now is the most logical fight for both guys to take because the winner of that fight is right there in the title picture. Neither one of these guys, I think, is positioned to fight for a world title right now. But Thurman versus Tszyu, the winner of that is an even bigger name. Will have a good win in their resume and will be a natural opponent either for Fundora. He's still got those belts after next week. And any of the other top guys at 154, which is a loaded division right now. So I'm, good for Keith Thurman to bounce back, get that win. And now if he can stay busy and stay active, get one more fight in 2025, he might be able to get one more shot at the world title. Last thing for you, Sergio. On Sunday, we had...
You already said last thing in his last question, and you already
I said a couple more things for you.
Pays behind, all right? So come on, man. I'm going to send you an invoice. Pay up already.
Did you just hear me say a couple more things for you, Sergio, before the last question?
Make it quick.
Take the gunk out of your ears and listen. Callum Walsh. 154-pound contender. He gets a first-round knockout in Madison Square Garden on St. Patrick's Day weekend. He beats Dean Sutherland. What do we think of Callum Walsh? He's undefeated. Now he's 13-0, 11 knockouts on his resume. He has got some heavy hitters behind him. Dana White supports him. Tom Loeffler promotes him. He's getting good exposure at some of these venues. He's fighting on UFC Fight Pass, which has an audience. Do we look at Callum Walsh now as a contender?
No, not yet, but a ticket seller. He's turning heads. He's more Andy Lee than he is John Duddy. I mean, Irish fans, and you would know this being, from that heritage, you guys love your boxing, right? Especially in the Northeast. And you can't wait to have a star. It makes sense. They're ticket sellers. They're popular. They're punchers. They could fight. I'm a fan of Walsh. I think he's more Andy Lee than he is John Duddy. I'll tell you that.
What is the big difference between Andy Lee and John Duddy? Like John
Duddy didn't pan out. Champion. John Duddy didn't have skill, but they matched him up great. He had the look, he had the power, he had the following, but then he wasn't the goods when they matched him up when anyone.
Wait, sorry. So you think Callum Walsh is good then?
I just said that he's more Andy Lee than John Duddy. Yeah, so we got something here. I mean, Freddie Roach ain't gonna train him if he didn't think he could be great. 1, 2, Dana White and others are not gonna, start talking his name at 13 fights in, unless he's the goods. He's the goods. And that knockout that he just had is making rounds and going viral because it's devastating. You're not accustomed to seeing up and comers with less than 15 fights get knockouts like that unless they're special. So the power's real, the size is real, and the dude fights patient and fights calm. He's a southpaw. Freddie Roach does great with southpaws. I think he's gonna be special. I really think he's gonna be special. He'll be a champion one day, and he's gonna be a popular ticket seller one day because this guy he's scary, man. He's in my weight division. All right, he's a 6-foot fighter with long reach, power, and a southpaw stance. I would not go anywhere near him if I was still fighting, let alone a champion. So yeah, man, I'm a fan of this kid.
He's being promoted very well. He's headlining events. He's getting good exposure. He's getting matchmaking that's really good. He's fighting guys with good records who aren't very good. And he's able to add these names to his resume. I do think, Sergio, he's reaching the point where I'd like to see him in with someone that's closer to his level. And the guy I'd like to see him in with, honestly, is Xander Zayas. I mean, Xander Zayas is another guy that needs a legitimate fight. Top-ranked prospect, Puerto Rican, undefeated. I think he's 21-0. Both these guys are kind of reaching that level where you gotta. It's not bleep or get off the pot level yet because they're still young in their early 20s. But I don't need to see, Callum Walsh in with another Dean Sutherland. Just the same way I don't need to see Xander Zayas in with any of the guys he's fought and either knocked out late or shut out in some of his recent fights. You think about it, Irish versus Puerto Rico. That plays in New York City, man. Like that plays really well.
I know it'd be great, but it's not marinated yet, man. I know you love to hear that word, but it's not ready yet. Why are you going to kill one of these superstars?
Why does it kill one of them? I hate this.
Why is it you're going to knock off one of these potential superstars just because you want to see them fight this early in their career? It makes
just the second segment of the show, Sergio, was talking about Ammo Williams getting his mojo back after a loss.
Ammo Williams already has almost double-digit fights, if not already double-digit fights. So
both these guys, Xander Zayas has 21 fights.
Yeah, this kid has 13-0. Not ready yet.
Deal 13-0. That's not nothing. Look, by the way, Dana White backs this kid. Doesn't really promote him or manage him, but he backs him. Dana White just last week in New York was singing a song about the best always fighting the best, not letting things marinate, doing things the UFC style. Well, it's time for you to put your money where your mouth is with Callum Walsh. You think that you want to have these big fights early? You want to test these guys early? Look, put him in with Xander Zayas. Xander Zayas is not some world beater.
You're getting a little controversial here. Normally, you ride the fence, you company man.
But my God, you straddle the fence like an Adonis. What are you talking about?
Right, well,
nobody is the bigger company man.
Well, if that's the case, throw money at both these kids and make that fight happen. And one of their careers is going to get derailed early just for the satisfaction and the bloodthirst of people like you and Dana White. Make it happen. All right, blood money, I'm in. Let's go.
What do you want, Xander? What more do you want Xander Zayas to do?
I want these kids to prosper. I want them to have long careers, long prosperous careers financially. I want them to keep their brain cells. I want them to win a world championship. I don't want them to chase quick gold just to get knocked out, never pick up a world title. It happens all the time. I've been there. All right, so I can speak on it. You have not. Dana White, as great as he's done as a promoter, cannot speak as a fighter. So let me cover the futures of fighter and what I think should be right. I think both these kids should wait at least 5 more fights before they fight because that's a mega fight. An Irish kid in Puerto Rico.
Not a mega fight.
That's a mega fight.
It's a good fight. It's not a mega fight.
Match him up the right way. In 2 years, that's a mega fight in New York.
It's a good fight in New York. I don't think it's ever going to be a mega fight in New York. And Sergio, why you drive me crazy with these takes is that it was just last week that you were talking about how great the matchmaking was for Ammo Williams. They put him in tough. So they put him in competitive fights, always putting him in competitive fights that help you get better. Well, for both these guys, Xander Zayas, Callum Walsh, facing each other, one's probably going to take a loss, and that'll set that fighter back. But it's not going to set them back forever. We saw that with Ammo Williams. And to the winner will be a big step forward, an instant ticket to a championship-level fight. Come on. You got to be consistent here. You can't say Ammo Williams should get applauded for taking tough fights and then say, no. We don't want to see Callum Walsh against Xander Zayas. That's too tough a fight for both these guys.
At 13 fights in, no, I don't think he's ready. Give him another year. Give him at least 3 more fights, and then we could be talking about this fight. But I think he has a high ceiling. I think he has all the things you want in a prospect and someone that you can market great. He has the power. He has the look. He has the trainer in Freddie Roach, and he has, promoters already salivating to promote him. So what's the rush? I say that all the time. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Ammo Williams had 16 pro fights when he fought Hamza Shiraz.
Three more. There you go. 3 more than this kid. All right. So give this kid 3
5
more.
less than Xander. So I don't know where your argument kind of comes from there. On the way out the door, Sergio, I want our producer Adam to play for you the correct pronunciation of Janibek.
Janibek, Kazakhstan.